The excavator blade ripped my private road marker out of the ground before I could even reach the gate. I heard the crack of old wood splitting over the roar of diesel engines, and then I watched a crew of men in orange vests drag away the sign that had stood at the end of my driveway for 24 years. The smell of fresh asphalt and hot rubber filled the morning air. My gravel road, the one I maintained, the one listed with my property records, was disappearing under a layer of black pavement. And standing beside, it was a brand-new stone entrance pillar with a polished metal plaque. Cedar Ridge Estates Community Access Road. I stared at that sign while a man in a yellow safety vest walked toward me holding a clipboard. "Mr. Walker?" he asked. "That depends," I said. "Who's asking?" He looked down at the paper in his hand. "I'm with Mountain Peak Paving. We're completing the HOA road improvement project. You should have received your assessment notice." Then he handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter on Cedar Ridge Estates, HOA letterhead. A $185 private road usage assessment. I actually laughed for a second because I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. They weren't charging me to repair a community road. They were charging me to use my own. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm a civil construction project manager, and I bought this property outside Cedar Ridge, Colorado, because I wanted one thing I couldn't find anywhere else. Quiet. The kind of quiet where the only sounds are tires crushing gravel, wind moving through pine trees, and the old wooden gate opening when I come home. That road was part of why I bought the place. The previous owner, Frank Donnelly, had maintained it for decades. He wasn't a wealthy developer or some land baron. He was a retired mechanic who believed in doing things right. Before he sold me the property, he pointed at that wooden marker and said, "Keep that there. It tells people where the line is." Now it was gone, and someone had replaced it without asking. I walked over to the construction foreman. "Who authorized this?" He didn't hesitate. "The HOA board. Victoria Harrington signed the work order." That name landed harder than I expected. Everyone in Cedar Ridge knew Victoria. HOA president, neighborhood organizer, the person who always had a polished smile, a folder in her hand, and a reason why everyone needed to follow her plan. She wasn't chaotic. That was the part that bothered me. Chaos leaves mistakes behind. Victoria left paperwork. I drove straight to the HOA office with the envelope sitting on my passenger seat. The paper felt heavier every mile, not because of the $185, but because of what it represented. Someone had made a decision about my property before I even knew there was a decision to make. Victoria was waiting behind her desk when I arrived. She didn't look surprised. "Ethan," she said with a calm smile. "I was wondering when you'd stop by." That sentence bothered me more than an argument would have. She expected me. "We're improving access for the entire community," she said. "Your property benefits from the upgrade." "My property?" She leaned back. "The road connects to Cedar Ridge now." I looked through the office window toward the entrance road in the distance. The construction crew was still working, still changing something that belonged to me. I pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures I had taken that morning. The missing marker, the new pillar, the fresh asphalt. Her expression barely changed. "That marker was outdated," she said. "We replaced it with something more appropriate." That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. Victoria Harrington hadn't accidentally crossed a boundary. She believed she had the authority to move it. When I got home that evening, I walked the edge of my property with a flashlight. The ground was disturbed where the old marker had been. But something else caught my attention. A small orange construction flag was stuck in the dirt several feet away from the new pavement. Someone had marked the property line before they started. Someone knew exactly where my road ended. And I still didn't know why they built over it anyway. I barely slept that night. Not because of the $185. Money comes and goes. I've managed construction projects where a single mistake could cost more than my house. What bothered me was the confidence behind that letter. Victoria didn't send me a bill because she thought she might be right. She sent it because she believed nobody would challenge her. The next morning, I printed every page of the assessment notice and spread it across my kitchen table. My wife, Laura, stood beside me with a cup of coffee, reading the same sentence over and over. Private road usage assessment. She looked up. "Does the HOA own the road?" "No." "Do they maintain it?" "Not until yesterday." "So they changed it, then charged you for the change." That was exactly the problem. I grabbed my work notebook and started writing down everything I knew. Date of construction, names on the work trucks, company name, photos of the removed marker. The orange flag near the pavement. In construction, details tell the truth. Concrete cracks. Survey stakes move. Paperwork gets rewritten. But physical work leaves a trail. By noon, I was driving through Cedar Ridge with a folder on the passenger seat. I stopped at 3 houses connected to the same private road system. The first homeowner, a retired firefighter named Bill Carter, opened the door before I even knocked twice. "You got one too?" he asked. He held up a white envelope. Same HOA letterhead. Same $185 charge. The second homeowner had one sitting unopened on his counter. The third person told me something that made me slow down. "I don't even use that road," she said. "My driveway connects to the main street." I looked at the envelope in her hand. "Then why did they bill you?" She shrugged. "That's what I was trying to figure out." By the end of the afternoon, I had 6 copies of the same assessment. Different names. Different properties. Same amount. Same wording. Victoria hadn't singled me out. She had rolled this out across the neighborhood. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because it meant the road was only the beginning. A few days later, I attended the HOA board meeting. I expected arguments. I expected people to defend the project. What I didn't expect was how prepared Victoria would be. She walked into the room carrying a thick black binder. Not a few papers. A binder. She connected a laptop to the projector and displayed a professional presentation titled Cedar Ridge Transportation Improvement Initiative. Photos of the newly paved road appeared on the screen. Charts. Budgets. Projected maintenance costs. She had prepared a full campaign before most residents even knew construction had started. "Change is difficult," Victoria said. "But protecting property values requires leadership." A few people nodded. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. She wasn't acting like someone defending a mistake. She was acting like someone presenting a victory. When my turn came, I stood up and asked one simple question. Where was the homeowner vote approving this assessment? The room went quiet. Victoria didn't hesitate. "The board has authority to make necessary infrastructure decisions." That answer stayed with me. Not because it proved she was wrong, because of how quickly she said it. After the meeting, I walked back to my truck and found something tucked under my windshield wiper. A printed notice. Not from the HOA. From a private security company. It said road access monitoring would begin immediately for community safety and compliance. I stared at the paper under the parking lot lights. They weren't just collecting money anymore. They were preparing to control who could use the road. And when I turned the notice over, I found the part that made my stomach tighten. The security contract start date was 2 days before the construction even began. The security notice stayed on my workbench for 3 days. I kept looking at it while I worked, turning it over in my hands like a piece of equipment that didn't belong. In construction, when something shows up before the job starts, there's usually a reason. Planning, preparation, intent. The date bothered me most. The security company contract began 2 days before the first asphalt truck arrived. That meant someone knew exactly what was coming. I decided to stop guessing. The next morning, I loaded my truck with the things I trusted more than opinions: a measuring wheel, a camera, a copy of my property records, and the original survey documents from when I purchased the land. My goal wasn't to prove Victoria was wrong. My goal was to understand what she believed gave her permission. I started at the entrance where my old wooden marker had stood. The replacement stone pillar looked expensive. Smooth granite, brass lettering, fresh concrete base. It looked permanent. That was the point. But construction leaves fingerprints. I walked around the base and noticed something strange. The new pillar wasn't centered where the old marker had been. It had been moved almost 8 feet onto my side of the original access line. I measured it twice. Same result, 8 feet. I took pictures and marked the location in my notes. That single detail bothered me because whoever installed it wasn't careless. They had a survey. Someone had told them where to put it. Later that afternoon, I visited the county recorder's office with my property documents. The clerk pulled up the recorded plat map from 1998. I placed it beside the HOA's community map from the board meeting. At first glance, they looked almost identical. Same neighborhood, same roads, same lots. Then I noticed it. The road names didn't match. The county map called my access road Walker Private Access Easement. The HOA map labeled it Cedar Ridge Community Connector. One word had changed everything. Private. Community. I asked the clerk if there had been a recorded transfer. She searched the system. Nothing. No ownership transfer? I asked. No recorded easement modification either. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not relief. Not victory. Just confirmation that I wasn't imagining the problem. The road had changed on paper without changing legally. But I still needed to know how far this went. I contacted the paving company listed on the work trucks. Mark Ellison, the project manager, agreed to meet me at the site. He looked uncomfortable before he even started talking. "I'm not trying to get involved in a neighborhood fight," he said. "I'm not asking you to pick sides," I told him. "I'm asking who hired you and what documents you received." He opened his folder. The same black and white construction paperwork contractors use every day. Work order, site plan, payment authorization. Then he showed me the document that caught my attention. The client listed on the project wasn't Cedar Ridge Estates HOA. It was Cedar Ridge Infrastructure LLC. I looked up from the page. "I've never heard of that company." Mark shrugged. "It's who paid the deposit." That was new. The HOA wasn't just collecting money. There was another entity involved. I asked Mark who signed the authorization. He flipped back one page. There it was. Victoria Harrington's signature. Same handwriting. Same name. Different organization. When I got home that night, I spread everything across my dining room table. The removed marker photos. The security contract. The 2 maps. The construction paperwork. The $185 assessment. For the first time, the pieces were starting to connect. This wasn't simply an HOA misunderstanding over a road. Someone had created a system around it. And the biggest question had changed. I wasn't trying to find out why Victoria thought she owned my road anymore. I needed to find out who was making money from pretending she did. I knew Victoria had noticed me before she ever said my name again. People like her don't react when they lose control. They adjust. 3 days after I met with Mark Ellison from Mountain Peak Paving, I came home to find a uniformed security guard standing at the entrance to my road. My road. He was sitting in a white utility cart beside the new stone pillar, a clipboard resting on his knee. "Morning," he said as I pulled up. "I'll need to verify your access authorization." I stared at him. My access authorization? He looked uncomfortable, but he followed the script. New community access procedures. Everyone using this road needs to be registered. I looked past him at the pavement. The same pavement they installed without my permission. The same pavement they charged me to use. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply pulled out my phone and recorded the interaction. The guard noticed. "Sir, are you recording me?" "I'm recording my property," I said. That was the first decision I made that week. I stopped relying on conversations. I started creating a record. I saved every email, every notice, every photo, every timestamp, because I had learned something during years of construction work. When a project goes wrong, people remember differently. Documents don't. By the afternoon, Victoria had already changed the story publicly. At the next neighborhood gathering, she stood beside the new entrance pillar and explained that the road upgrade was about safety. She talked about emergency vehicles. She talked about winter conditions. She talked about protecting property values. And from a distance, it sounded reasonable. That was the dangerous part. Nobody wants to oppose safer roads. Nobody wants to sound like they are against improvement. Then she mentioned me. "I understand some homeowners struggle with community changes," she said. "But individual concerns cannot prevent progress for everyone." People looked in my direction. Not angrily. Worse. Uncertainly. That was when I realized the fight was no longer just about property. It was about perception. Victoria wasn't trying to beat me with a better argument. She was making me look unreasonable before anyone saw the evidence. I went home that night and checked the security notice again. Then I checked the construction documents Mark gave me. Then I checked the photos from the first morning. Something bothered me. The security company had installed a small metal access box beside the entrance pillar. I had photographed it before, but I hadn't looked closely. The box had a serial number. So I went back the next morning. The area was quiet. No workers. No vehicles. Just the sound of gravel under my boots. I photographed the box from every angle and compared it with the contractor documents. The serial number matched the equipment listed in the security installation paperwork. But the installation date was earlier than the road construction. Someone had planned security before there was officially a road to secure. I brought the information to Laura that evening. She looked over the papers spread across the kitchen table. "So they built the system first?" "Looks like it." "Why?" I didn't answer. Because I was starting to understand the pattern. The road wasn't the project. The road was the excuse. The next morning, I received a certified letter from Cedar Ridge Estates. Inside was a formal notice stating that my property access privileges were suspended pending community compliance review. They weren't asking for the $185 anymore. They were taking away my ability to use the road entirely. And at the bottom of the page was Victoria Harrington's signature. The same signature from the construction authorization. The same signature from the company paperwork. She had just made the first move that could not be undone. The first morning my access was suspended, I sat in my truck for almost 10 minutes without starting the engine. The gate was closed. Not locked with a rusty chain. Not blocked by accident. A clean black security arm stretched across the road, with a small red light blinking beside the keypad. My own driveway was 30 yards away. I could see my house through the trees, but I couldn't get there. I stepped out and walked toward the entrance. The same security guard from earlier was sitting in the utility cart, drinking coffee like this was a normal Tuesday. "Morning, Mr. Walker." I looked at the gate. "Open it." He shook his head. "I can't do that. Your access has been temporarily restricted." "Restricted by who?" He pointed toward the camera mounted above the keypad. "The HOA." I looked up at the lens. A small black circle staring back at me. That was the moment the situation became real. They weren't arguing about ownership anymore. They were controlling movement. I called Victoria from the side of the road. She answered on the second ring. "Ethan." Her voice was calm, almost polite. "Your security company just blocked my access. Your access was suspended pending resolution." "Resolution of what?" She paused. "The board has concerns about your refusal to cooperate with community infrastructure procedures." I looked at the gate. The word cooperate stuck with me. That was how she framed everything. Not control. Not ownership. Cooperation. I drove away because I knew what she wanted. A scene. A confrontation. Something she could show neighbors and say, "See? This is why we needed security." Instead, I documented everything. The gate position. The time. The guard's name. The camera location. The notice. Every detail. Then I called my equipment supplier. That was when I felt the real damage. I had a gravel drainage project scheduled for the following week. A crew was supposed to deliver materials through my access road because my property sits above a steep slope. Without road access, the delivery company refused to enter. "Sorry, Ethan," the dispatcher told me. "We can't send trucks somewhere we're not authorized to go." I stood in my garage staring at the empty space where the gravel pallets were supposed to sit. A simple gate had just cost me a project. The financial loss wasn't catastrophic, but it was real, and that bothered me more. Victoria had created a problem, then made the consequences look like my responsibility. A few days later, she held another HOA meeting. This time, the room felt different. People weren't angry. They were cautious. Victoria showed pictures of the new entrance system and explained that the gate was protecting community safety. She even mentioned my name without saying anything negative. That was her talent. She didn't attack directly. She let people fill in the blanks. "Some homeowners are adjusting to shared infrastructure," she said. Shared. That word was everywhere now. On the signs. In the presentations. In the notices. I went home and pulled out the original photos from the first day. The old wooden marker. The new stone pillar. The orange construction flag. The security box. I zoomed in on the picture of the access gate installation. Something caught my eye. The timestamp. The photo was taken at 7:42 a.m. The same morning the security company arrived. I checked the installation paperwork. Then I checked the construction schedule. The dates didn't match. The security system had been activated before the road improvement project was officially approved. I stared at the screen. For weeks, I had been trying to prove they were using the road. But now I was looking at something different. They had prepared to control it before they had the right to. I didn't know what that meant yet. But for the first time since the gate went up, my defeat didn't feel random. It felt documented. I printed the two dates and taped them side by side above my workbench. One was from the security company invoice. The other was from the HOA road improvement notice. At first glance, they looked like ordinary paperwork. But construction taught me one thing. When two things are supposed to happen in order, the order matters. The security system was installed before the road project officially started. Not after. Before. I grabbed my original property documents, the photos from the first morning, and the folder I had been building since Victoria removed my marker. Then I drove back to the entrance. The gate was still there. The black metal arm. The keypad. The camera. The concrete base around the security box. Everything looked permanent. That was what Victoria wanted people to see. Permanent. I parked on the shoulder and started measuring. The security box sat beside the new stone pillar, exactly where the old orange construction flag had been placed. I pulled out the photo from part 1. The flag was still visible in the corner of the image. Same location. Same spot. The contractor didn't randomly install equipment. They built around a planned boundary. I photographed the measurements and saved copies in 3 places. My phone, my computer, a cloud folder. I wasn't taking chances anymore. The next person I contacted was Mark Ellison. When he met me at a coffee shop outside town, he looked relieved that I wasn't calling to blame him. I figured you'd be angry, he said. I am, I told him. Just not at you. I placed the security documents on the table. Did you know the access system was installed before the paving contract? Mark frowned. He pulled out his own project file. Contractors keep records because they have to. Material deliveries, change orders, payments. The boring details that become important later. He flipped through the pages, then stopped. Wait. He pointed. The original site instructions. I leaned closer. The first version of the work order didn't mention a community road. It mentioned walker access improvement. My stomach tightened. Who changed that? Mark turned the page. A revised instruction sheet had been added 3 days later. The title had changed. The language had changed. The road was now described as Cedar Ridge Community Connector, but the location was identical. Same measurements, same property line, same road. Only the ownership description had changed. That was the first time I saw the pattern clearly. They weren't just building something. They were changing the story of what existed. I drove home and spent the evening organizing everything. Not theories, evidence, photos, dates, maps, contracts, names. I created a timeline showing every step. The marker removal, the paving, the security installation, the $185 assessments, the access restriction, each event connected to the next. But I still needed something I couldn't create myself. Independent verification. The next morning, I contacted Tom Alvarez at the County Road office. I knew him from previous construction projects, and I knew he didn't care about neighborhood politics. He cared about measurements, maps, permits, facts. I didn't send him accusations. I sent him a simple request. A property access review. A formal inspection of the road classification and improvements. Before I submitted it, I paused for a second. A few weeks earlier, I was standing outside a locked gate wondering how I had lost control of my own driveway. Now I was watching the same gate become the thing that could prove what happened. I signed the request. Attached the photos. Attached the records. Attached the timeline. Then I hit send. Victoria Harrington still believed she had closed the door on me. She didn't realize she had just given me the clearest view yet of everything behind it. The county inspection request went through on a Monday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, Tom Alvarez called me. I can look at the road, he said. But understand something, Ethan. I'm not there to settle a neighborhood argument. I don't want you to, I replied. I want you to look at what was built. That was the difference. For weeks, Victoria had controlled the conversation by making it about emotions. Community, cooperation, progress. I wanted it to be about measurements. Tom scheduled the inspection for Friday morning. And Friday morning, I stood beside the locked gate watching Victoria arrive before anyone else. That told me everything. She wasn't surprised. She was prepared. Her SUV rolled to a stop beside the stone entrance pillar, the same pillar that replaced my old wooden marker. She stepped out wearing a clean blazer and carrying a folder. Not a clipboard, a folder. She smiled when she saw me. Ethan. Victoria. Her eyes moved toward Tom, then toward the camera above the gate. She understood exactly what was happening. Good. I wanted her to understand. Tom walked the road slowly, measuring distances, checking the access point, comparing the physical layout with the county records. He didn't rush. That made Victoria uncomfortable. People like her were used to fast conversations, not careful ones. After 20 minutes, Tom asked a simple question. Who authorized this access control installation? Victoria answered immediately. The HOA board. Under what authority? She opened her folder. We manage the community infrastructure. Tom looked at the documents, then looked back at the gate. I'm asking who authorized controlling access to this specific roadway. Victoria's smile tightened slightly. This roadway serves the community. Not, this road belongs to the community. Not exactly. I noticed the wording. So did Tom. He walked back to his truck and pulled out his copy of the county map. The same map I had studied. The one showing Walker private access easement. Victoria noticed. That map is outdated, she said. Tom looked up. Outdated. Yes. The neighborhood has changed. I watched her point toward the new pavement. The new sign. The new gate. All the things she had built to make the road look different. That is why we updated the infrastructure, she continued. The physical improvements reflect current use. There it was. The argument she had been building all along. If it looked like community property, people would treat it like community property. Tom asked another question. Did Cedar Ridge Estates purchase this access road? No. Did the HOA receive a recorded transfer? Victoria hesitated. Only for a second. But I saw it. Then she recovered. The board approved the improvement project because the road benefited residents. Tom wrote something down. Victoria looked at me. You see what's happening here, Ethan? You're trying to stop something that helps everyone. That was when I understood why she was so confident. She wasn't trying to prove ownership. She was trying to prove control. And she believed control was close enough. Tom requested the original construction authorization. Victoria handed it over. The paper moved from her folder into Tom's hand. I watched the page turn. Then I saw it. The signature. Victoria Harrington. But beneath it was the company name. Cedar Ridge Infrastructure LLC. The same company Mark found. The same company nobody in the neighborhood had ever heard about. Tom looked at it. Is this your company? Victoria answered without hesitation. Yes. The silence afterward felt heavier than the mountain air. Because she didn't realize what she had just done. She had connected herself to every piece. The road. The payments. The construction. The access control. Tom placed the document into his inspection folder. Victoria looked at me like she thought she had finally cornered me. Like she believed admitting involvement proved she was responsible. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The final piece wasn't a confession. It was better. It was something she had willingly placed into the official record. And as Tom closed that folder, I knew. Now I had it. The county report came out 6 days after the inspection. Victoria called an emergency HOA meeting before anyone else could explain what was happening. That was her style. Control the room before the room understands the facts. The meeting was held in the Cedar Ridge Clubhouse. Same polished wooden tables. Same community banners. Same people who had watched her presentation weeks earlier and nodded along. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Nobody was talking about progress. They were talking about records. Victoria stood at the front with her folder in her hand. I want everyone to understand what's happening here, she said. This is a disagreement over a necessary infrastructure project. A few people looked at me, waiting. I didn't move. Because for the first time since this started, I wasn't trying to convince anyone. I was waiting for the facts to arrive. Tom Alvarez placed a packet on the table. The county completed its review of the access road improvements, he said. The room went quiet. The first document was simple. The original county map. Walker private access easement. Several homeowners leaned forward. Victoria immediately responded. That map reflects old conditions. Tom nodded. That's true, which is why we reviewed every subsequent filing. He placed another document beside it. Nothing dramatic. No raised voice. Just paper. The updated HOA map. The one showing Cedar Ridge Community Connector. The issue, Tom said, is that this designation changed on an internal HOA document, not through a recorded property transfer. The first assumption disappeared. The road didn't become community property because someone renamed it. Victoria crossed her arms. We improved it for everyone. Tom looked at her. Improving property does not automatically change ownership. Nobody spoke. Then he placed down the security contract. The same one I found after my access was blocked. The access control system was installed before the road improvement project was approved. A few heads turned toward Victoria. She shook her head. The security system was part of the improvement plan. Tom pointed to the dates. The installation occurred before the improvement plan existed. The second piece connected. The gate wasn't protecting a community road. The gate was creating the appearance of one. I watched people glance toward the entrance doors. The same doors they walked through every month. The same place where Victoria had stood and called this a safety measure. Then came the third piece. The construction records. Mark Ellison's documents. The original work order. The revised work order. 2 pages sitting beside each other. Same location. Same measurements. Different description. Walker access improvement. Cedar Ridge Community Connector. The room changed. Not loudly. Just enough. A few people stopped looking at me like I was the problem. They started looking at Victoria. She stepped forward. Those documents don't prove anything. Contractors make wording changes all the time. Tom didn't argue. He simply turned the page. Correct. But these changes were made after the HOA began collecting access assessments. That was the moment the $185 charges finally meant something to everyone else. The fee wasn't just a fee. It was part of the timeline. Victoria looked around the room. For the first time, she didn't look prepared. She looked like someone trying to catch up. Then Tom placed the final document on the table. The authorization sheet. Cedar Ridge Infrastructure LLC. Signed by Victoria Harrington. The same signature she had confidently handed over during the inspection. The same signature connecting the HOA project to the private company behind it. Nobody said anything. The silence was heavier than an argument. Victoria tried one last explanation. I created that company to manage community improvements efficiently. Tom nodded. Then those financial records will need to be reviewed separately. That sentence changed everything. Not because it was loud. Because it was official. The county issued a temporary enforcement order that afternoon. The access gate could no longer restrict property owners while ownership and financial reviews were underway. The road remained private pending final correction. And for the first time in weeks, the gate opened. Not because Victoria allowed it. Because her own system had finally proven why it never should have been there. The first thing they removed was the gate. I watched the security company truck pull up on a cold Tuesday morning. The same black metal arm that had blocked my driveway for weeks folded into the back of a trailer. No arguments. No dramatic confrontation. Just bolts being removed one at a time. The same road that had felt like a boundary line now felt like mine again. A few days later, the county posted the official correction notice at the entrance. The wording was simple. Walker Private Access Easement. Not Cedar Ridge Community Connector. Not shared infrastructure. Not community access. My road. The stone pillar Victoria installed was still standing, but the brass plaque had been removed. The holes where the letters were mounted remained visible in the granite. Small reminders of how quickly confidence can turn into evidence. The HOA also began issuing refunds. Every resident who had paid the $185 access assessment received a notice explaining that the fees were collected without proper authority. Bill Carter stopped by my house that weekend carrying one of the envelopes. "I owe you an apology," he said. I shook my head. "You didn't have the information I had." He looked back toward the road. Still, I should have asked more questions. That meant more to me than seeing Victoria lose. Because for weeks, the hardest part wasn't the gate. It wasn't the money. It was watching people believe a story before they knew the truth. My drainage project was rescheduled. The supplier who had canceled on me called and apologized after the access issue was resolved. "We should have waited before making assumptions," he told me. The equipment trucks returned 2 weeks later. The sound of gravel pouring from the trailer echoed through the property again. A sound I didn't realize I had missed. Victoria stepped down from the HOA board shortly after the review began. Nobody celebrated. Nobody needed to. The consequences were already there. The contracts connected to Cedar Ridge infrastructure were reviewed, the financial records were examined, and the community replaced the board members who had approved the project without proper oversight. It wasn't about destroying someone. It was about removing a system that had allowed one person's confidence to become everyone else's problem. A month later, I found the old wooden marker sitting beside my garage. The same marker that had been pulled from the ground on the first morning. The edges were scratched. The paint was faded. But the words were still there. Private access, Walker property. I repaired it myself. New coat of stain. Fresh lettering. Then I carried it back to the entrance. I placed it exactly where Frank Donnelly had put it years before. Not farther out. Not farther in. Exactly where it belonged. Laura stood beside me while I tightened the last bolt. "You know," she said, looking down the road. "I think that sign means more now than it did before." She was right. Before all of this, it was just a marker. A piece of wood at the end of a driveway. Now it represented every morning I spent measuring, documenting, and staying calm when everything around me was trying to make me react. The road never needed a louder owner. It needed someone patient enough to prove the truth. That evening, I sat on my porch and listened. No security card. No keypad beeping. No engines stopping at the gate. Just tires rolling over gravel. And this time, they were coming home.